So I wanted to go ahead and say good morning to everybody. My name is Lauren Lockwood. I'm the chair of this year's 23rd Annual Dynamic Women in Business Conference. I am so thrilled and humbled to be a part of this incredible crowd of women who have come here today to share their experiences, to learn from others, and to form new bonds. So before we kick off today's events, I wanted to share a little bit of background on today's theme, Let's Go, which you'll see sort of throughout the day. So I was at another women's conference last year, and I heard a woman ask a panel what the women did to be more successful in their careers. And the first panelist said it was finding the right mentor. The second panelist said it was striking the right family balance. And then the third panelist, a president at Fidelity, said, it's being close to my customers. I asked my customer service team to put customer calls on an iPod, and I listened to the calls to and from work every day. That is a great piece of advice. I guarantee several people from that room went back to work the next day and asked their customer service team to do the same. So this is really what Let's Go is about. There has been a tremendous amount of dialogue in recent years around the obstacles and opportunities that women face in business today. After being a part of these discussions, we feel motivated and inspired. But then what do we do with that energy and momentum? What can we do tomorrow to act on this inspiration? In addition to sharing insights, we have asked all of our panelists today to share their own advice and best practices on how to lead a more balanced, satisfying, and successful career. We have also added a series of workshops on everything from productivity to salary negotiation. And my hope is that each person walks away with their own Let's Go list of things that they can do tomorrow to act on the inspiration and the motivation that you get from today's conference. So we encourage you to share any insights you have on Twitter with the hashtag Let's Go. You'll also see that in your program. And I also wanted to let you know, if you're not familiar, we put on this conference as part of a broader organization, the Women's Students Association at HBS. And we put on a number of events for people. So I wanted to introduce to you our co-presidents, Alexandra Dahm and Amanda Burleson.
I had a slight fear of falling down the stairs, so that's over now. Thanks, Lauren, and thanks to everyone here. On behalf of the Women's Student Association, Alexandra and I are honored to host you today. Here on campus, the WSA focuses on the full life cycle of HBS women, from prospective students leaving the workforce and considering HBS, to current students building new skills, building friendships, and exploring career aspirations, and all the way to alumni who are out in the workforce and leaning in, as they say. But for today, and for each conference, the WSA focuses on the broader mission of HBS, educating leaders who make a difference in the world. We are thrilled to bring together a powerful group of women who are of course, already making a difference in the world. It's our hope that each of you use today to build new skills, to network with each other, to broaden your knowledge, and to hopefully have a little bit of fun.
So it is my pleasure today to introduce our first speaker, Maria Renz. Maria Renz is CEO of Quidsi Inc., the Amazon-owned company behind Diapers.com, Soap.com, Wag.com, and a number of other sites. She was an early employee at Amazon, joining the company in 1999, and has since served in many leadership positions there. Most recently, she led the company's physical media category, books, CDs, and DVDs, and Amazon's site in Canada. Maria holds an MBA from the Owen Graduate School of Management at Vanderbilt University and a BS from Drexel University. A native of New Jersey, she now lives in New York City with her husband and 2 children. She's here to share her story and the principles that she made her own as she climbed the ranks at one of the world's most interesting and innovative companies. She's also here to take your questions, and logistically, when it's time for Q&A, please come down to these microphones so we can all make sure to hear you. So please join me in welcoming Maria Renz.
Allie and Amanda, thank you for that introduction. I'm glad I also did not fall up the steps, so we all have that over with. Thank you so much again for the introduction and for the opportunity to join you today. Thank you to the Harvard Business School Women's Student Association for convening this forum, and especially for placing me in the company of so many inspiring women business leaders. At a conference like this, it feels like my job is to warm hearts and stir passions, to tell you all about the adversity I overcame, the battles I fought, the glass ceilings I shattered. Well, I wish my life were that interesting. I really don't have an amazing story. The truth is, for some people, it's a glass ceiling. For me, it was a glass door. It was my second year at Amazon, and I was running the marketing department. I had a meeting with 2 senior VPs about our holiday marketing plan. The meeting was in a new office building, and I was determined to be there on time. Sometimes I have a little problem with that. So I parked my car, got off the elevator, and ran straight into a glass door. My nose started gushing blood. The security guard who saw me, who told me incidentally I was the second person that day to accomplish that feat, not that it caused him to warn me off of it in advance, offered me some paper towels and ice. It didn't occur to me to cancel the meeting. Junior people don't cancel meetings with senior executives. So for the next hour, I presented a PowerPoint deck, holding a bag of ice to my nose and bloody paper towels underneath. Now, you're free to reach one of 2 conclusions from that story. One is that I'm nuts, and you may not be too far off. The other is that, and here's the crashing insight with which I'm supposed to stir you and rouse you to inspiration. I showed up for work. Actually, you're free to conclude both. But since the latter is more flattering, and since the theme of this conference is let's go, even if your nose is gushing blood, I'm going to take that as my theme. The fact is, succeeding as a woman in business does involve unique problems, and a woman in business does offer unique perspectives. The challenges are familiar to us. From raising our voices to balancing our lives, there's no question our path is both different and daunting. But the secret? Don't tell anyone I spilled these beans, but it's that there isn't one, unless you count what each of you in your heart already knows. Show up to work, confident in who you are. Be that person. Do what you love. Treat your time like the scarce and priceless commodity it is. Manage it relentlessly against what you love and whom you love. Luck doesn't hurt either. And that brings me to what I want to discuss with you today. Amazon operates on 14 leadership principles, and since I've been at Amazon for 14 years, the leadership principles have now been grafted to my DNA. They range from dive deep to customer-centric to bias for action. Don't worry, I'm not going to detail them all. I do encourage you to Google them, because you couldn't do better for a basic set of operating leadership ideals. They're not bland corporate technobabble, but rather thoughtful and unique. I did, by the way, start this process by asking my husband, Tom, to look at the leadership principles and tell me which ones he thought were my strengths. He said he was putting principle number 13, frugality, on my development list, and that he wishes I weren't so good at number 11, disagree and commit. You'll hear more about that, and I can guarantee so will he. In any case, what I thought I'd do today is share those leadership principles that have been most meaningful in helping me organize my professional and personal lives. It starts where my experience with Amazon did, innovate and simplify. It's Amazon's 3rd leadership principle, right after dive deep and drive for results. And it's what I saw the instant I first interviewed at this little internet company in Seattle. I was working in New York City at the time doing brand management for Kraft Foods' post-cereals divisions. You know, Honeycomb and Waffle Crisp cereal, Alphabets? That was me, and I was happy. But when Amazon called, I flew to Seattle to check it out. I interviewed with 7 people. Every single one of them pitched me on a different job. The company had no organizational plan. I was unimpressed. Until that is, I asked Amazon's recruiter to summarize Amazon's character. It was, she said, a bunch of wicked smart people running really fast who totally adhere to the notion that it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. That stopped me in my tracks. Partly because I'm from New Jersey and I wanted to figure out what wicked meant. partly because I was curious to see if I could keep up with this bunch of wicked smart people, and mostly because life doesn't bring many opportunities to look around, grab a ball, and start running. My first job was running email marketing, but in time, management turnover afforded me enormous opportunities. I launched our consumables categories: health and personal care, beauty, and groceries. I led shoes and jewelry, along with a standalone website called endless.com. And eventually, I started thinking of the leadership team less as bosses than as venture capitalists. I wrote the business plan for the flash sales site My Habit, pitched it, secured the funding, hired the team, and launched the site. Then I was offered the leadership of Amazon's physical media business. Physical media, like a real book, is our legacy business. But I figured it was a commodity. It was all about price. There was very little room for innovation. I was wrong. Working on physical media afforded me the opportunity to innovate on a much larger scale. From undertaking a product detail page redesign to automating back-end processes on behalf of all Amazon categories, I learned there's room to innovate everywhere. A lesson confirmed by my experience now with Quidsi, where we're building a new innovative customer experience. Now, to innovate and simplify, you have to set fear aside. You've got to be bold, and that brings me to the next leadership principle that's worked for me: think big. That's Amazon's leadership principle number 4. Here's the story I put under that category. You might see it, file it less under think big than what was she thinking. We'll see. The year was 2001, and I'd recently been promoted to Director of Marketing Communications. At the time, Amazon faced a tough choice between spending money on a year-long ad campaign or on a new program called Super Saver Shipping. We ran tests and the results were clear. Our customers love free shipping. As a marketer, it didn't seem to make sense. Even today, most retailers use free shipping as a promotion, not a brand builder. But if I believed in our company mission to be customer-centric, and which is leadership principle number 7, by the way, I had to believe that the customer-centric choice would build our brand. The problem, of course, was that a company that wasn't conducting marketing communications didn't need a director of marketing communications. It didn't need a team of people managing TV ads or Sunday newspaper circulars. I remembered sitting in my office trying to figure out whether I was struggling with the recommendation because it was the wrong marketing choice or the wrong me choice. It turned out to be the right both choice. I recommended to Jeff that we not spend money on traditional advertising, rendering my team and my job obsolete. It's a meeting I won't forget. I was nervous, but I kept my cool, and in the end, the senior leadership agreed. Later, Jeff and my manager told me that they appreciated my courage. Ending that role opened a new array of opportunities, and most of my team transitioned to new roles too. Thinking big means taking risks. Taking risks means being responsible. That's why leadership principle number 9, the next one that shaped my life, is ownership. That starts with owning your career path. My husband and I are Vanderbilt alums, and once we were scheduled to speak to the incoming MBA class. On a whim, we asked our kids what advice they'd give. Our son replied, "Learn to tie your own shoes." Well, in addition to being pretty solid personal advice, especially for someone who likes shoes as much as I do, I think that transfers pretty well to the professional realm too, because there's no getting around learning the basics in business. I happen to believe a business leader develops in 3 distinct phases. First, you learn to operate, to maneuver the levers of profit and loss to drive results. Next, you learn to lead, to manage strong and weak performers, to develop and attract talent. And finally, there's vision, the capacity to look at white space and articulate what no one else can see. Many people try to cheat the development process by taking positions with puffed up titles or pushing to lead a team before they've endured a couple hands-on spins of the business cycle. It's like buying tennis shoes with Velcro straps. There's no shortcut, no substitute for learning to tie your laces the hard way. That's ownership. And ownership is just as important in our personal lives. If anything, that's what we've forgotten. We've got to be the CEOs of our personal lives, to run them so that they don't run us. Your life at home scales. What starts out as you becomes you, plus a partner, plus kids, plus aging parents, plus friends, plus pets, and more. This expansion is a blessing, just like a surging business is. But just like the rapid growth stage of a company, it brings challenges too. Good problems, but problems nonetheless. And you have to take charge. I suggested before that time is a scarce commodity. It is. Nothing is more precious. It's the one commodity that simply is not going to expand no matter how much success you enjoy, how much money you make, how much power you amass. CEOs and salespeople and administrative assistants all have 24 hours in a day, and you have to manage that time against the priorities you set. One of the ways I do that, and I know how hokey this sounds, is by the annual business cycle. Twice a year at work, I review our team members, and every 6 months, I develop a written plan for our family. An MBA is a more useful tool than you'd guess. When I talk with other friends who are women, especially those with MBAs, about work-life challenges, everything from budgeting for a wedding, finding a preschool, remodeling a home, or having a baby, I often find myself asking, "Did you spreadsheet that?" And often, remarkably, they have. I have quite a collection of spreadsheets. And speaking of spreadsheets and speaking of hokey, there's no getting around the story behind the next Amazon leadership principle, which is hire and develop the best. At home and at work, you have to partner wisely. Now, to be sure, you don't hire the people you love, but you do partner with them. You do develop a team in your family, and you have to trust them. So here's the story. One night while working late at Amazon, I stumbled into an argument with my boyfriend, now husband, over the phone. We were living 3,000 miles apart. I don't recall the reason for the argument, although I'm quite sure I was right. In any case, it got heated, and we started questioning why we were working so hard to maintain this relationship at such a distance. Being new MBAs, and more to the point, total geeks, we decided to break out a spreadsheet to analyze our relationship. Each of us had a column that we labeled annoyances, under which we listed everything that bothered us about the other. Tom's included items like, "You spend too much money." I remember mine saying, "You snore." Once we compiled a good long list of annoyances, we proceeded to rate them, which led to more bickering. This time, over to whether to use a 3-point or a 5-point scale. We settled for 5. 1 was least annoying, 5 was most annoying. Then we each rated our own annoyances, again on a 5-point scale, according to whether we could change or the annoyance was permanently a part of who we were. I can't recall exactly when the turn came, but by the end we were laughing at ourselves. A few years later, I found the spreadsheet on my laptop and printed it out. Not a lot had changed. I was still spending too much money, Tom was still snoring, and we were still together, laughing over a bottle of wine. The reason was trust. And it works in professional life too. Tom came home once from a review at work. They identified some areas where he could improve. He was feeling underappreciated and bruised. He said he was going to quit. And as he was relaying the feedback to me, a little voice inside my head couldn't help but saying, "Gosh, that kind of does sound like him." So I listened and I said, "Suppose you pretend they're right, just for 6 months. If they turn out to be wrong, you can still be mad and you can still quit. But if they're right, what a great learning that would be." And he did, and it worked out. Now, 2 years later, the proverbial shoe was on the other foot. I was indignant after a review, and he had to talk me down. The fact is, you have to trust that the people you work with have your best interests at heart, that they're giving you feedback that will benefit you. In an environment of trust, you also have to have the confidence to embrace Amazon's 10th leadership principle, being vocally self-critical. Not long after my daughter started preschool, I asked her if she felt smart there. She replied, "Sometimes." Now, I'm a bit of a neurotic mom, stop me if that sounds familiar, and I instantly started questioning whether we were doing a good job raising a confident child or picking the right school. Just to be clear, I did say preschool, not college. Like I said, maybe a touch neurotic. But a little thought led me to the conclusion that my daughter's wisdom trumped my worries, because we should never be afraid to be sometimes smart. Never be afraid to dive into issues that aren't your expertise. Being sometimes smart is how you get all the way smart. Being sometimes smart is exactly why I've stayed at Amazon for so long. It isn't easy or comfortable being sometimes smart. My biggest failures have been as a result of not feeling comfortable with sometimes smart. For example, the launch of my habit was delayed for a month because I didn't have the confidence to dig into the technical details of a new tool we were building. I trusted but didn't verify. It's just as important, if you're going to be sometimes smart, not to let your ego get in the way. I was immensely fortunate early in my career to work directly with Jeff Bezos. Marketing was a turbulent organization. I had 7 bosses in 3 years, not least because Jeff had strong opinions. We hired senior marketing executives who showed up and then quickly disappeared because he or she wasn't accustomed to dealing with a passionate founder with strong opinions on marketing. To me, that was an opportunity, but it took some pretty thick skin. On occasion, I didn't have a direct manager, so I went directly to Jeff. And if Jeff thought something was stupid, he used to have a really unique way of saying so. He'd say, "That's stupid." But precisely because I was so junior, it didn't bruise my ego. I just fixed it, and that was essential to my professional growth and career advancement. There are other Amazon leadership principles that ring true for me. Drive for results is one, being customer-centric, as I suggested, is another. As I said, Google Amazon leadership principles, and you'll find them all. The ones I've mentioned today: innovate and simplify, think big, hire and develop the best, ownership, be vocally self-critical, have all been especially meaningful to me. But in a sense, I think we could boil all 14 of those principles down to 2 words on the program for this conference today: let's go. It's true for anyone in business, but it holds especially true for women, and it's the only way forward. Showing up, being ourselves, have the confidence to speak, running our lives the way we run our businesses, and managing our time as carefully as we manage any other scarce resource. Is it tougher for women? Of course. Do we have something unique to contribute? You bet. We all know the glass ceiling is up there, but the only way to bust through it is by running into a glass door and grabbing the paper towels and ice and saying, "Let's go." And with the exception of the bloody nose, that's my advice and my aspiration for each of you. Thank you. Questions? Anybody? It must be early. No one has a question. There's a mic here.
Hi, my name is Marcella. Thank you for being here today. Could you explain how transparent your work life and your private life is to your colleagues and to your family, and do you think it's important that you merge your private life and public life as a CEO?
Thanks. It's a bit subjective. I think everyone will have a different level of comfort with being transparent. For me, I think with technology, so much of your life kind of blends throughout your day. It's not as compartmentalized as perhaps it once was. And so for me, I think I don't have a problem with it, and I'm pretty transparent because it's kind of part of who you are, and I think it gives kind of context to people. And I think anecdotes, like personal anecdotes I shared today, can be really meaningful in a work situation and kind of driving home a point or articulating an insight. And I think that it's pretty, at least my experience is pretty common for those 2 things to be blended. By the way, I'll mention while somebody's coming down. So I was really pleasantly surprised when I went through the list of female HBS grads at Quidsi. There are 10 female HBS grads at Quidsi, which is awesome. And when you think about, we have about 325 people in total in Jersey City, but 125 of them are customer care representatives, so about 200 in what you would call potentially corporate, which I thought was a pretty amazing representation from a single MBA school, of which 5 or 6 of them are here today. So, go ahead. So the question, in case folks didn't hear it, was about women having one another's backs, right, in the workplace and how we can encourage that. Perhaps I feel like the older I get, maybe the kind of more apparent that becomes. And it's my personal experience. Early in my career, I think I felt more kind of alone as a woman. In many instances, I was kind of the only woman on the team or the only woman in the department. Maybe it's just that things have changed kind of so much that there are more women at the table, and so you do, at least I feel like naturally want to have one another's backs. I mentioned to somebody this morning, I was here and participated in one of the panel discussions on e-commerce probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And it was interesting to me at that time that not all the panelists were women. About half of the people on the panel were women. And to look at the lineup today, right, and see the representation of being able to, have a very robust list of panel discussions, mostly all women as panelists, is a great change in a very short kind of period of time. Does that answer the question? Great.
Hi, my name is Samantha, and as a young professional woman, I've come across either perceived or real ageism in the past, as well as being a woman stigmatized that. And as a young CEO, I was wondering if you had that same experience and how you dealt with that before.
So the question, in case folks didn't hear, is, have I experienced ageism, right? I can't say that I have necessarily. If anything, maybe it's just my self-perception of, in looking back, I could question whether I was aggressive enough in certain instances, perhaps because I felt like, I may have been the youngest person at the table, right? Or I was too aware of kind of titles and hierarchy in some instances. But I haven't necessarily experienced it, no.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I have a question for you. So I recently had a session with my mentor at work, and one thing that she pointed out to me was I was letting the company dictate what my next moves were going to be, and her advice that she said the transformation that she went through was being more intentional about her own career planning and trying to sell what she wanted to do to her superiors to open those doors. So you gave a little bit of a glimpse into that with the marketing story. I was just wondering, what have you done as far as intentional career planning and how it's been beneficial for you?
Great. So what have I done in terms of intentional career planning? I personally think that you manage 2 levels up. And I've been very conscious of that throughout my career. So your direct manager interacts with you a lot, right? And so in those interactions, I think they happen more frequently. It's kind of less high stakes. That person has a very good kind of sample set of how you perform in different situations in different ways. But the next level up is actually the person who has more influence in you getting promoted than your direct manager. And typically, that person you don't interact with as much on a daily basis. And so I think I've seen people maybe not be as mindful as those interactions, and not being as conscious, in those interactions of, this is my opportunity to kind of shine in a way. And almost, treat it as like a marketing exercise, right? You're marketing yourself inside your organization. And so, in that instance, it's, how well do you know your business? how prepped are you for that meeting or interaction? And for me at least, the more prepared I am for those instances, the more comfortable I can be in that meeting and have a conversation that's more on the same level. Where if I'm not as prepared, I don't feel as confident, right, in pushing back on things and really engaging in dialogue in a different way. And so I've tried to be very mindful of the kind of the manager of the manager. You know, and again, I think there's a little bit of kind of marketing that helps. You know, I've written my own promotion documents for my manager on occasion. It happens. Yeah, it's kind of it's a give and take, right? Because I think you want to be mindful of planning and asking for that next role. But there is also, once you build up a level of trust with your manager, you know, it's articulating where you want to go, but then also I think listening carefully as to what your manager is telling you in response. Because sometimes, you know, when I was offered the role on media, I didn't want to go to media. You know, I was like, you're kidding me, right? Like, I'm the scrappy one doing the new cool stuff over here. Like, that's books, you know, it's not even Kindle, like, it's not sexy. And my manager at the time was like, you need to do this. You need to try on this suit of clothes for your own good because it's about scale, and this is like really important in your development. And it turned out to be true, but you know, it wasn't what I would have chosen for my next step. And so there's that kind of push-pull to that relationship. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Skylar. You mentioned your affinity for shoes, which I can completely relate to. And there's often a debate about whether women need to act like men to be perceived as leaders. And I wonder if you've ever, you know, had to felt like you had to kind of angle or verbalize or deal with stereotypes of femininity in order to sort of manage your leadership style, or if you ever got pushback.
Right. You know, I think tech for me has been a really good fit from a career perspective because, you know, when you're in a really high growth situation, it minimizes the time that you can spend, you know, internally on like internal politics, or I think it also minimizes, you know, guys in tech don't golf at all. I don't either, you know, and so it kind of minimizes the, like, you know, you got to go golfing or go to a sports game kind of, I mean, they just like want to be with their computers. But that's okay for me because I kind of want to go home and, you know, be with my family. And so it's a good kind of blend there where you're at work, and then you can kind of go do what is exciting to you. So, you know, I've just kind of always tried, I can't be, you know, I remember I was on a team once and I was the only woman, and the guy who led the team, he's a sports nut, like fanatic. And so the beginning of every meeting was like 10 minutes worth of a recap of what was happening on like the NFL or Major League Baseball or whatever it was. You know, I just kind of like sat and listened and went with it. But I had nothing to give in that conversation. But you're kind of like, okay, this is who he is, right? But conversely, I'm sure now if you ask people on my team, they'd be like, well, she starts every meeting, and I hear 10 minutes of like, you know, some great new pair of shoes that, you know, she found somewhere. And so it's trade-offs in that, but for me, tech is great because it's kind of a equalizer, and I think. You know, the companies aren't perfect, but I think they do have an intent on being more of a meritocracy. I think there is a higher tolerance to just be who you are at work. Everything from, you know, what you're wearing. It just isn't as kind of traditional. It doesn't have that traditional overhang to it. So. Hello.
Towards the goal, or perhaps is it just something where you found you were taught it? Where does it start from?
I find I have to be kind of passionate about what I'm working on, and to find kind of the piece that I can be passionate about. I'm passionate about consumer experiences. Maybe it's because I was raised in New Jersey and spent too much time at the mall, but that's what really interests me. So that and. After I'm reading this book, and I think there's this great insight. It's called Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, and she has TED Talks online. And she has these two lines that said I am enough and I've had enough, right? And it's to me, that's kind of what balance is. It's that you get to a certain point and you're just okay, I am enough, and this is who I am and how I want to kind of make a contribution, and I've had enough, and then I can easily kind of draw lines of and strike the balance of my life, because I'm confident enough in doing that. And so I think, to me, hopefully at a certain point, each one of us is really passionate because we've found, to me, it's just, at least for me, my career has been almost like a journey in self-awareness. And over time, you start noticing the patterns in the choices you're making, right? The roles, the companies that are interesting to you. And you're kind of saying, yeah, that's me, right? And hopefully that passion becomes more apparent in your career because you're going more to what you love. Thank you.